now we're going to get to French politique, okay? Oui. French Prime Minister François Bayrou loses confident vote in National Assembly, okay? Here.
Well, it's clearly quite embarrassing for the French president to lose two prime ministers in just a year. Was last June that he called a surprise snap election, hoping that he would perhaps be able to gain a parliamentary majority for his centre-right bloc. He failed to do that. Now what has he got next? What can he do next? He can appoint another prime minister. He'll certainly have to do that in order to run the country. But trying to find a candidate that can unite a deeply fractured parliament is not going to be easy. He's obviously tried it twice. It hasn't worked. Who else will he turn to? That's going to be the question. His other option is that he could dissolve parliament. He could call new elections. But that's not necessarily going to play in his favour either, because the last time he did that, the far right made major gains, and they would be projected to make major gains in any new ballot. So very difficult time for the French president. Also a lot of social pressure. We're looking at days and weeks of strikes. More and more people are increasingly fed up.
You mean to tell me that when you openly undermine and actively your left flank, that you have a hard time maintaining the government? That's strange. Many such cases happening all around the Western world. This is the fourth time the French government has collapsed in the last 20 months. Macron has consistently refused the mandate that the Popular Front had initially, hoping to wait out and expect the understandable infighting that has already taken place in the Popular Front within a bunch of different left flank parties fighting amongst themselves to do his very best to ensure that there is no left leadership in France, which the people voted for, by the way. The left won the last legislative elections. After the last parliament dissolution, they don't care about democracy. Exactly. Now, of course, the scary thing that's happening in France, as well as many other European countries right now, is that there is a massive resurgence of fascist movements and fascist mobilization that's taking place. So Macron, being this neoliberal, centrist, right adjacent politician, has also been actively trying to stop the right flank from coming into power as well. But in the process of engaging in this kind of activity, he's only fed into the mobilization of the right. I say right adjacent, but yes, I would say he's very much right wing. Yeah, of course. I think he's very much right wing, but technically, the Overton window exists in France as well, just like it exists everywhere else. And in the Overton window, he's supposed to be the center right. The thing that we talk about quite a bit on this broadcast is liberals actively siding with fascists or directly collaborating with fascists or allowing fascist sentiment to foment and build in the country in an effort to undermine their own left flank. The problem here is, from my estimation, from what I've seen, and this is, I don't even think this is like a biased assessment of things that are taking place, but ultimately it looks as though the centrist bloc that has very little popularity and tremendous amounts of anger and resentment directed towards it is allowing right-wing mobilization to take place under the auspices of trying to stop the far right. They're taking, in the simplest terms, they're saying, we don't want the far right and we don't want the far left to take over this country. Except the far left bloc has actually secured a real democratic mandate. And Macron, when this is unfortunately within his powers to do so, went against the democratic majority's wishes and refused to appoint a prime minister that was supposed to be from that bloc. And the reason for why he chose not to do that was very clear. He was just I do not want this country to be controlled, and I do not want the left to have any control over the power structure of this country, over the governance and the affairs of this country, in spite of what the public wished for, in spite of what the public voted for. And it wasn't even that Mélenchon himself is seen as a controversial figure in French politics for obvious reasons. He's bold, he's brash. I really like him, as you guys know. We linked up with him. Ultimately, they were willing to concede on the Popular Front agenda. They were fine with not having a France Unbowed party member be the prime minister. And even then, it was not enough. It was not enough for Macron. So under different circumstances, if there was actually an interest in fighting back against the far right, if that was a position that was untenable, if that was something that Macron was refusing to entertain, he would have actually let the left flank take over the government. And yet he didn't do that. And what he did is illegal? No, technically it's not illegal. And only because like the Popular Front, the coalition of left flank parties, were they didn't reach the proper number of votes. Like they won, but they still, I think in the parliamentary structure, they needed a certain percentage of votes that they did not get. I might be getting this wrong right now. They didn't get the majority. They got the most seats. They got the plurality, which means that their wishes are supposed to be heard by the centrist, the Macron's party and Macron's coalition. And yet, technically, it is not illegal for him to choose whoever he wants to appoint as the prime minister. Even if like the France Unbowed backed Popular Front coalition of left flank parties that actually won the majority, I think Macron could have still been able to choose whoever the he wanted to, but it would have been even harder for him to make that argument at that time. But it's one of those things where, and we're seeing this in the United States of America as well, a lot of this stuff is held together by tradition and not like direct law, with the assumption that like there's not going to be a president that turns around and refuses to listen to the democratic wishes of his own citizens. And yet here Macron is doing just that. When you have a guy like that, there's not really much you can do. It's just, if your system is designed around norms, and we know this as Americans, we've seen this, like we've seen what Trump has been doing. When your system is designed around like, well, everybody signing off on the notion that we're all in this and we're just not going to disrupt the institutions so severely for personal gain or for personal biases, personal ambition, you got a guy like Donald Trump who just says, nah, I'm doing it. I'm the president. I can do whatever I want. And all of a sudden, there are no safeguards against that sort of thing. And France is experiencing that currently. Macron's political ambitions are over, right? His party is over. His career is done. But in the last couple of years of his leadership, he's just basically saying, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want, and claiming that he's doing this specifically to stop the far right. But in fact, it seems like all he's doing is actively undermining his left flank from seizing power. And of course, there are a lot of business interests and wealthy people that don't want the left flank, and they're terrified of that as well. So obviously, for that reason, the media is somewhat on board with these sorts of initiatives. They don't like Macron, but they certainly don't like Mélenchon either. If Le Nouveau Front Populaire had full majority, Macron could not have used the 49.3 text to force the budget issue. 49.3 opens up a gate to an automatic vote of non-confidence that the majority group could vote. Coalition is his only path to success. The thing is, while being a liberal, Western, democratic, capitalist country, France still has a lot of revolutionary fervor or class politics, more so than other countries do. Obviously, there's a shit ton of imperialism that plays a role in the French economy, but that's not what I'm talking about here. Like the French still have a working class backed politics, and they openly communicate that, right? With the exception of these centrist parties, like that's the reason why you see the far right in France and the Gilets jaunes protests that have taken place that had an eclectic formation of different kinds of political movements and ideologies like come together. Sometimes as an anti-immigrant protest, sometimes like anti-vaxxer protest, but like in many circumstances, these massive movements and this mass mobilization that has taken place has been done against the Macron government for example, trying to raise the retirement age for every other working class Frenchman, with the exception of the police. So, do with that information what you will. But because of that reason, a real working class party, a real left party that says, no, we are a working class party, is basically the only thing keeping the nationalists at bay, the nationalists from being able to seize control over this conversation. So if the left flank of the French parliament in general reflected the Democratic Party's attitudes, reflected Macron's attitudes, which was the only game in town for a while, then the nationalist movement would have already controlled the French government, I think. They would have already taken over with this weird fascist, reactionary, anti-immigrant, anti-vaxxer in certain instances, but like still pro-worker, fake pro-worker attitude, the Nationalist Party would have been able to be the only game in town for the French working class. That is where Mélenchon comes into play. And there's, from what I understand, there's going to be massive mobilization taking place, I believe, in a couple days in France, right? Was it the 10th? People were talking about it in my chat as well, where on the 10th, there's going to be mass mobilization on the 10th in France. They will fight till they die to stop Mélenchon. Worse than that, worse than what they're trying to do to Zoran. Oh, for sure. I think the Democratic Party is very hostile to its left flank for sure, but they are more willing to consolidate power. Also, remember, French unions still hold a decent amount of power. They do sectoral bargaining there, so like they have a lot of interest in and will show their strength with regular frequency by striking. And obviously, this is impossible to copy in the United States of America because we don't have that kind of labor militancy at all in our recent history, and our unions are gutted and don't have any power. Now, some French chatters in here will say our unions suck too, and I understand that, but like your collective bargaining coverage is not even comparable to America. Our collective bargaining coverage is like not even 10% of both the private and public sector in total. Your union collective bargaining coverage is like, it encompasses almost the entire economy. It's not even a question. Like you have an entire reversal. It's like 90% versus 10%. So France, albeit, has experienced a lot of austerity and seen a lot of harm to their social programs over this period of neoliberalization, still has like social safety nets that Americans have never even tasted. They've never even seen it. Not to say that like France is this socialist utopia, make no mistake. It's clear that it's not. It's just, it looks like it's a socialist utopia from American standards. This is more so a criticism of how bad things are here in the United States of America. We'll obviously see where this goes. I genuinely don't know. I don't know what happens. I guess Macron will just keep naming more prime ministers that are favorable to him, favorable to business interests. This is something that I talked to Mélenchon about, if you recall, when I was in France. One of the suspicions that I have in general is that like Macron doesn't have a lot of domestic capabilities anymore. He's gone. Like the moment that his term is up, it's over for him. His political ambitions are gone, right? And for that reason, I think like as the president, he's just utilizing whatever area of power that he has, and that's why he's like actually been focusing on foreign affairs quite a bit, right? And he's using that as a way to try and like bring support back in his direction, kind of getting notes from Mélenchon and François Baud, as a matter of fact, by just like taking a more aggressive stance against Israel, which is still bullshit, but like he's trying to do things like recognize Palestine, conditional recognition of Palestinian statehood, things of that nature. So he's doing stuff like that. Obviously, the anti-Russia stuff plays well in France as well, so he's doing that too. He's just posturing on things like that in an effort to gain some more support. But I think he's cooked. At least inside of France, he's cooked. In France, it is clear we are living in a failing democracy, my friend. I think a lot of Western countries, or at least their citizens, are coming to terms with that reality right now. It's interesting because it's something that I've said quite a bit, obviously. As a socialist, you understand that, liberal capitalist countries are never going to reflect the democratic wishes of the majority. They're never going to govern at the behest of the people. They're going to govern at the behest of profits. It's a bourgeois democracy. It is what it is. Having said that, I think like with the Gaza situation and the majority wishes on this and numerous other undemocratic provisions, numerous other undemocratic decisions that have been made in France, in the UK, in all of these other countries, like in the United States of America, people are slowly but surely coming to the recognition that they've been sold a lie, and that democracy, at least under this current economic organization, might not be so democratic. It might just be simply a lie that's told to people so they don't revolt. And when they do, especially in the case in France, because they love revolting, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing for sure. They are violently suppressed. And we're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing that in Germany, for example, once again, with the issue of Israel-Palestine. We're seeing that in France, too. It's not such a great state of affairs overall, but just understand that this is happening all around the Western world.
Today was his last-ditch attempt to save his job. Left, he said, with no choice but to offer himself up to a confidence vote. Why? To break the political deadlock which has dogged the government since last summer's inconclusive National Assembly elections.
Mesdames et messieurs les députés,
Far-right and far-left National Assembly members joined forces to oppose Monsieur Bayrou, outnumbering conservatives and centrists who'd prefer to keep him in place.
I mean, that's an interesting assessment to make. I feel like this is this is not the appropriate analysis. I feel like more so what I just described, which is that the center refuses to leave its grip of power in spite of the democratic wishes of the plurality of voters, refusing to follow norms in an effort to continue maintaining this like neoliberal form of governance at a time when there's tremendous enmity towards that kind of governance demonstrated by the democratic wishes of the public. And therefore, all the people that are outside of this like tiny sliver of control are understandably frustrated. And of course, all of this paired up with austerity, paired up with like people's material circumstances diminishing, is only going to lead to more volatility, economic volatility and economic instability, creates anger and resentment. Who capitalizes on that anger and resentment? Who organizes off of that anger and resentment? The far right. This will only feed into far right mobilization. The far right can turn around, the nationalists can turn around and say, see, these guys are all the same. Okay, le wokisme, islamo-gauchisme, they're out of control. They don't care about you. They don't care about the real French workers. We do. We care about the real French working class. And that's why we want to take the fight back to the people who are ruining your lives, the Muslims. People who are ruining your lives, the refugees. Oh, your trains are not running on time? It's because of the Muslims. There's too many refugees. There's too many Muslims. And they're ruining it. They're ruining all of the social safety nets that you took for granted your whole lives.
But within France, he is deeply unpopular and increasingly powerless, unable to fix the issue that he's been obsessed with for years, France's colossal debt crisis. Remember the Gilets jaunes that ran riot in central Paris? That was the reaction then to a small step towards reducing the debt mountain. François Bayrou has fallen on the same hill. He wanted to introduce an austerity program which would have cut 44 billion euros from government spending.
These guys would rather chop their arms off than demand a tax package for corporations, by the way, and the wealthy. They will kill the elderly. They will kill the children. They will make sure that the already crippled social safety nets in France reflect America's non-existing social safety nets before they suggest taxing the rich. Oh my God. It is so insane. Even if you think like the debt crisis is a major issue, right? Even if you think debt is a major issue, then why the are you offering amenities to corporations? And they'll always say, oh, it's because these corporations would go elsewhere. There's so many tax havens that they could just like do business with. They already do business with those tax havens. What the It's a race to the goddamn bottom. It's so bad that you got dudes who would be social democrats, like Keynesian economists and social democrats, even people like Thomas Piketty have done formative work in this field, specifically talking about like the international race to the bottom in Western liberal capitalist countries, as far as like trying to trip over themselves to offer the best subsidies and the best tax cuts for the mega corporations year over year. They literally did remove the ISF, tax on fortunes for the richest French, and this 42 billion euro cut Bayrou wanted is around the amount of the loss due to the ISF cut. How do you look at this situation and not lose your mind, dude? How do you look at the situation and go, this is great? Like, this is what's happening in America too. It's so similar. I know that there are like different cultural, there's different cultural attitudes. There's different versions of like labor militancy, and maybe some more success has been seen in places like France in general. But like broadly, it's always the same. These guys are genuinely throwing poor people under the bus in an effort to offer more tax cuts to the wealthy, and then they turn around and they say, oh, the debt's too much, the debt's too big of a problem. Sorry, you can't go to the hospital. Sorry, we're gonna shutter the hospital in your neighborhood. Sorry, your public transit is not gonna work. That's what the supposed center and left coalition is known by in many of these places. That's what the Democrats are known for. And if not tax cuts, they at least allow the tax cuts to go through when the Republicans do it here in America, in our duopoly.
The government debt in France currently stands at 114.1% of national income. That is the third highest in the European Union. Only Greece and Italy are higher. Germany, by contrast, stands at just over 62%. In Paris, market traders and customers here are as divided about a remedy as the deputies in the National Assembly.
Come back in 10 days and you'll see nothing will have changed. There won't be a majority. There'll be no budget. Why? Because France is torn apart. It's over.
Macron is like the perfect personification of neoliberal politics, because the debt has exploded under Macron. Okay, it has risen quite a bit under Macron. Obviously, debt always is increasing in a country, in any country where the GDP is increasing, right? So I guess you have more assets, your economy is larger, therefore you can take on more debt. That's the meta. That's the understanding. The defense from the Macron heads has been, well, the GDP's increased by 30%. That's pretty significant. So, of course, the debt's going to increase as well. Meanwhile, they're not looking at why the debt is increasing or what is increasing the debt. And a big chunk of the reason why that debt is increased is not only obviously like military payments and things of that nature. Now that Trump is actually demanding more of the GDP, a higher percentage of the GDP get invested back into military as well, invested back into NATO as well, specifically. Not just like for France, it's not just like for American weapons. They have their own manufacturers as well. But like on top of that, it's just giving away tax cuts to the very wealthy. That's it. It's nutty. And he has stated over and over again, the reasons why we're doing this is so that we can explode the French economy. The economy is blossoming. The economy is growing. It's fantastic. All the while, when you don't actually do any of the spending back on your citizens, when you don't actually beef up the social safety nets. You said France doesn't buy U.S. military stuff. It doesn't matter. We also have our own military industrial complex. Do we have a fantastic economy in the United States of America? No. Military expenditure doesn't cycle back into the economy. Do you not understand? It's just a way to also give subsidies and offer tax cuts and fund one specific sector that gets unlimited unlimited dollars in exchange for like building weapons and machines and shit like that are killing people, but that doesn't actually circulate through the economy in the same way. It's the same principle. It just goes back to the wealthy people. It goes back into the hands of capital owners. I know there's a French defense industry. I am aware of this. There are workers within these sectors as well, for sure, but ultimately it's only one sector and it's not as productive as it would be for construction, for example. Overall, you're not investing back into the country in meaningful ways, in ways that would actually improve people's material conditions. You're simply trying to increase the GDP by making corporations move money around, by offering them subsidies, by offering them tax cuts, so that they don't leave the country, or at least that's the argument that they present. And then when the when the debt grows, you turn around and you say, well, sorry, GDP grew and so did the debt. But now the debt's consequential. Now the debt growth is too far. It's far too big. So we have to, cut back on some of our expenditures. And it's literally done so that those tax cuts are justifiable. It doesn't make any sense. You're just starving the poor in that process. It's so stupid.
Well, joining me now from Paris is the French MP Nathalie Oziol from the left-wing party France Unbowed, which is part of the bloc of opposition left of centre parties. Nathalie, good to have you back on the programme. So you've got your scalp. Beirut is gone, a crushing defeat. What now?
Yeah, that's the big question, actually. It's the second government which fell in less than a year. But this was inevitable because after the snap elections, which took place last July 2024, Emmanuel Macron decided not to respect the vote by appointing far-right prime ministers and a Macronist prime minister. So obviously, because he didn't respect the vote, his prime ministers, his governments were not legitimate. So now what I say is, enough with this. There is one person in France who's responsible for the situation, the critical situation. It's Emmanuel Macron himself. So now it's time for him to leave.
You tweeted tonight or posted tonight, Beirut has fallen. As you just said, time for Macron to follow. But he's not going to, is he? He has said that he will stay till the end of his term in 2027. There's really very little that can unseat him right now.
Well, we'll see about that, because, he also said that this government was supposed to last for a little longer. And then when Bayrou asked for this confidence vote, well, as you could see, he fell and he was toppled. And again, we had snap elections, a new configuration in parliament. We had two governments, a third one in a few days. Nobody believes that the problem will be solved. And I listen to the people being interviewed. They don't believe that either.
Right.
So what else?
I think, more austerity will solve this. More tax cuts, more GDP improving tax cuts, followed up by more cuts in social expenditure. That will do it this time. And if it doesn't work, who gives a fuck? It's not a real democracy. There's no real democratic process. It's that simple. France is a republic, not a democracy. I love, dude. Is this the French hog version? Like this is something that I hear in America all the time. Okay, it's so funny. When I say democracy, I don't mean like direct democracy where every decision is voted on. Okay, by referendums. Why are we doing? It's a type of democracy. There are many different versions of this. There's a parliamentary system, there's a presidential one. But ultimately, when people are usually voting for their electeds, their representatives to represent their interests, and they get together and make these decisions, but like the wishes of the public are supposed to be heard. That is the most basic way to describe what democracy is.
Okay, but the problem is also France's mushrooming debt. As you heard in the piece, 114% of economic output. I mean, that is absolutely massive. The third highest debt in the EU. Macron's been trying to deal with it for years. He has failed. Barnier failed last year. Beirut has failed now. You're going to have to get it under control somehow, aren't you?
Yes. And apparently Macron is unable to do so. He has also
because of himself, because he decided to get obstinated in his political decisions, never to listen to any other proposition. We have propositions. For instance, re-establishing the solidarity tax on wealth. That would be a proposition. That would be something new. It was revoked. It used to exist in France. And this is a loss in money income in France. If we re-establish this tax on wealth people, this would be 4 billion euros, the same amount of money that the slashing of 2 holidays, which Bayrou proposed, was supposed to bring in. So why not choose a fair social measure? Solidarity from the wealthy people to the rest of society.
From 2017 onward until 2025, under the leadership of Macron, the national debt in France increased by 47%, which is around 1 trillion euros. economics understanders in France will then turn around and say, well, it doesn't matter because the GDP increased by 30%. And when you're wealthier, you can take on more debt. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that significant unless we're advocating to cut social safety nets. A big chunk of that, aside from numerous factors, whether it be COVID, slowdowns during that process, and now the tariffs aren't helping too much either, obviously. Like there are so many, and then energy crisis, Russia's war in Ukraine. Like there are numerous factors that play a role in this, of course, but it certainly doesn't help when the leadership has mostly used the moment of opportunity that they have to make it far more beneficial for the super wealthy French to pocket more and more amounts of wealth that they are generating off the backs of the French working class. And this last example of Bayrou and his initiative is a perfect demonstration of this reality. Trying to cut down on taxes for the wealthy once again, and then making the working class suffer to make up for that.
Jean-Luc Mélenchon of your party is going to be someone called Marine Le Pen or Jordan Bardella of the far right.
How do you know? You can see the future.
I'd love that the interview is just openly acting as a Macron surrogate. If you don't let the neoliberalists take your neoliberalists, you're going to get a fascist. So give up and let the almost fascists win. Is also saying that right now is also wrong because it's the reverse. The real situation is if you don't actually allow the democratic wishes of the public to come to fruition and allow your left flank to genuinely seize control over the government, which the people voted for, then you're going to let the fascists win. That is what has happened. The notion that like you have to abide by this centrist neoliberal party's wishes here unless you want the far right to win is so wrong because they lost the election. So it doesn't even matter. What do you mean? You can't just say that after an election took place and they lost. The person who is spoiling and going against like previous norms in French politics is not is not France unbowed. It's actually Macron. But there has been very little coverage of this in the Western world and in the Western press. And as a matter of fact, people have unironically defended it in the Western world and in the Western press in general, like Macron's decision making that if a left candidate or even a far right candidate were to do, they would never stand for. They'd be like, this is bullshit. How dare he do this? This is a dictatorship now. There's no more democracy. Democracy's fallen in France. We have to arrest this person immediately. But I read so many articles on this stuff when it was taking place where they would just defend it. They'd be like, well, you know, you don't want the far right to win and you don't want the far left to win. It's like, wait, what do you mean you don't want the far left to win? The far left won, okay? Their bloc won. It goes back to that same dynamic. If the liberals and mainstream press is actively trying to criticize the left flank, left populism from a centrist position, they end up normalizing the far right. That's it. And the far right grows in that process. They say, look at how stupid these guys are. These are all communists. They're all doing communist infighting. Vote for us instead. We actually know what the real problem is. The real problem is the refugees. Yes, the nationalists are far right. LFI is not. They're not far left. They're just leftists. Okay, that's it. It just sucks that like our understanding of what is normal politics is so distorted and so slammed in the direction of the right that normal leftists are seen as like radicals. They're not. They're not radicals at all. It just sucks because everyone in these supposed Western liberal democracies are at the mercy of like individuals and whatever their wishes are, whatever their interests are. It sucks. It sucks that like Macron could just like do this and these actions are not immediately met with like tremendous resentment and anger by institutions of power, by these propaganda, by these outlets of propaganda. Like in a way where if someone that is outside of the neoliberal center was doing such things, they would get attacked endlessly. It's the same as like, you know, think about the stuff that Trump has been able to do in the United States of America as far as like eroding norms versus if Bernie Sanders was in power somehow and he were to do that, how would they react to it? They don't even like it when Democrats break the norms and standards. Oh, and the center right, far right call LFI far right as a disqualification. trying to conflate them with the anarchist, anti-parliamentarian, revolutionary parties that exist too, but not in the LFI program. That kind of stuff works too, for the record. It does. I mean, it plays in the same way that like a lot of people don't tune into American politics and don't fully understand it. Obviously, these same issues persist in France as well. There's French normies too. They don't really fully get it. Even Wemby, my goat, who loves Mao, said that LFI was a little radical. You know, he wants a more moderate, progressive figure or whatever.